Today, when Donald Trump took to the airport tarmac to tout his latest batch of pardons, he was asked about the coronavirus and how China is handling it.
Some people don't seem to trust the data coming out of China. Are you worried about that?
Look, I know this. President Xi loves the people of China. He loves his country, and he's doing a very good job with a very, very tough situation.
If the president seems muted in his response, it may be because of his relationship with China and their president, Xi Jinping. The Washington Post reports that, quote, worries about rattled financial markets and their effect on the economy, as well as the delicate negotiations with China over a trade deal, have played a large role in influencing the president's friendly posture toward China. We also know that Trump's new budget calls for cutting U.S. funding to the World Health Organization in half, and that the top global health position on the National Security Council has been vacant for almost 2 years. And with cases of the coronavirus in China topping 72,000 and confirmed cases popping up in more than 24 countries, including 15 cases right here in the United States, and nearly 2,000 people dead, well, that response from the president is just not enough, is it? Especially for people on the front lines. Hawaii is one of the states with ports of entry that are screening for the coronavirus, trying to coordinate with the Trump administration. And Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii joins me now. And Senator, I wonder how that's going, the coordination with this anti-science administration with no director in one of the in the NSC Health Division.
Well, I think you've got it exactly right, that you've got an administration that doesn't much care about science, but also they don't really care about governing. So all of this stuff is kind of boring to them, which is why they've defunded the programs that are designed to help prevent a global pandemic. It's why they left the position open at the National Security Council, and there is no one, literally no one in charge of this from the National Security Council side. And not only did they leave it vacant, but then they eventually decided that they were going to eliminate the position altogether. They cut the CDC by 9%. So you're kind of dealing with a government that doesn't care about government, and then overlay your sort of normal bumbling incompetence onto the possibility of a global pandemic, and you got exactly what you got a couple of weeks ago. The good news is that on the ground, things are safe in Hawaii and elsewhere across the country, but it's not because of anything that the Trump administration has done. It's been in spite of it. Let me just give you one example of the kind of how nuts it was at the very beginning. There was an order to quarantine individuals, and the president, I think, issued an executive order on a Friday. It was in effect on, it was Super Bowl Sunday, for about a half an hour. And our state officials were on a conference call with officials from the federal government. They didn't know when planes were going to be landing, how many people were coming from the relevant province, and whether or not they had the capability to assess them, intake them, and quarantine them, and then if so, where they were to be quarantined. So this conference call that we had while planes were in the air was sorting all of this out. Now, we've got robust capabilities in the state of Hawaii, so we sort of fixed this, but again, not thanks to the White House.
And who do you talk to? I mean, who do Hawaii officials talk to in the White House? Who is there that has any competency at all? Are there career people left to speak to? Like, who do you call?
There are a few career people who are really trying to get this right. Listen, I have tremendous respect for the heads of both the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control. But what lacks here is coordination and effort, because CDC does what it does, NIH does what it does, but you really need someone to make sure the agencies work together. So there was a good example of the lack of agencies working together is they literally didn't know where people were going to be quarantined, and we were being told two different things while planes were in the air. Some people said within the civilian population, our attorney general said no way. And then we were told it was going to be fine if the individuals who needed quarantine were going to be at the Joint Bases Pearl Harbor, Hickam, in a secure facility. But then DOD told us, no, that's a no-go. So we were left sending texts and sorting out where these individuals were going to go and how are they going to be safely transported while planes were wheels up on their way to Honolulu. It was pretty bananas. We have settled it. I just want to reassure everybody, we have settled it. But to the extent that we've been fortunate with this disease, it's because of the epidemiology of the disease, not because of some sort of coordinated response from the federal government.
Are you concerned, having seen a lot of interesting stuff go through the Senate, that the Trump administration might try to use this coronavirus outbreak as just a way to do sort of more ethno-nationalist immigration policy?
Oh, I think you can always assume that there is going to be an angle to this that includes scaring people in the United States about people from other countries. And one of the things that worries me about preventing global pandemics and having a robust response from the United States standpoint, which we've been good at, is that the funding depends on whether or not the particular disease captures the public's imagination. So because there was a movie about Ebola and it was terrifying, they got $6 billion. Zika was a little harder to explain and less terrifying. They got $500 million and much later. And so there's a better way to do this where, just like with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, they get a tranche of money and then they determine how the money ought to be spent based on the severity of the disaster. And that's what I think needs to happen with CDC and NIH. So they don't have to come to the Congress and have, and have it depend on whether or not we're getting along with ourselves or whether we want to demagogue something. We should be funding a global health response. And in this day and age, it's important to separate this all out from politics.
Yep. Very quickly, we don't have a lot of time. Any of your colleagues having second thoughts, having let this guy off the hook, dealing with him privately?
Oh, you mean my Republican colleagues?
Senate. Yeah, Republican.
Yeah. I mean, but, look, I think it's not so much that if they had to do it over again, they would have voted to convict. I just don't think that would be factually correct. I do think they're struggling with what their role is anymore. And I think that they are sort of walking around hangdog, ashamed of their vote because they know everybody talks about us being the Article I branch.
Yeah, but not now.
But they gave up their authority.
They did. Senator Brian Schatz, thank you so much for your time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.